This is a reflection on a few of the ways Jesus has inspired us through the example he set and the life that he lived. We will start with the more easily perceptible influences and conclude with those of greater complexity. Here are 10 ways Jesus inspires the walk. Number 1. Matthew 8:20. Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. The world isn't exactly made for you to sleep where you please. Wooded areas are still private property. It would be impossible to afford hotels every night, even for most of those who are financially well off. And if you did have the luxury, you can't always walk there. We rarely have sleeping arrangements more than a day ahead, and when we started, everything was found the day of. Nothing is guaranteed, but somehow it always works out. We've slept in so many different places: fire stations, storm shelters, restaurants, at City Hall, tree nurseries, dairy farms, a camel farm, homesteads, vineyards, bars, churches, forests, cabins, a train caboose, playgrounds, and of course, lots of homes. Obviously, Jesus had to sleep somewhere. We can hardly imagine some of the places he woke up. Number 2. Matthew 6:25 through 27. Do not be worried about your life, as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Is life not more than food, and the body more than clothing? Which of you by worrying can add a single day to his lifespan? When we started the walk, we left with little over $200, and the faith that we would eat, because what we were going to do needed to be done. We weren't even sure what we were doing, just that we felt called to, not something we always touch on. We don't have the security of a paycheck. The walk is very feast or famine. Often, it's the moment we start to scrape the bottom of our bank account that someone pops into our life for 30 seconds, hands us a $100 bill, and then disappears, never to be seen or heard from again. There's so little we can predict throughout the course of our day, but Jesus' even more extreme example puts our luxury in perspective. It's highly unlikely that we will starve in today's world, and if your basic needs are met, why can't you put your time into what you believe is most important? Number 3. John 8:7. Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And Matthew 7:3. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? We're not sure how this walk would be possible if we were passing judgment on everyone who housed us. Everyone is so different, and most of us are inclined to think we are doing things the way they ought to be done. It's easy to observe through critical eyes. Judgments are always forming whether we like it or not, but we can find ways to let go of those judgments. Jesus' example of forgiving something both Christians and non-Christians struggle over, adultery, sits at the far end of wrongs we quickly write people off for, and observing the plank in our own eye is one of the surest ways to reframe our perspective. Number 4. Matthew 6:19 through 24. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. No one can serve two masters. Luke 12:15. Be on guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And Luke 14:33 through 35. So then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his own possessions. Therefore, salt is good, but if even salt has become tasteless, with what will it be seasoned? It is useless either for the soil or for the manure pile. We don't take sponsorships, we don't run ads, we don't affiliate with outside businesses, and we have decided to stand apart from all forms of transaction. Primarily for 2 reasons. Part of what we're doing is showcasing the goodness that can be found in the world. We don't want there to be a question of motives, so nobody is guaranteed exposure. On a deeper level, We want to show that an exchange of goods and services doesn't have to be transactional, but with the right hearts, can occur in goodwill. Through the display of our character, people trust us to continue the walk and produce meaningful content. And we trust people to support meaningful content, even if it is less popular and less favored by the algorithm than stimulating fun. Jesus was well aware of what made a good life, and he didn't justify any distraction from it. From selflessly helping your fellow man and trusting in love. Number 5. Luke 5:31-32. It is not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous to repentance, but sinners. People often say, you'll want to avoid these places or those. They're this way or that way there. If there really is something plaguing someone and stirring dissatisfaction, that might be who needs our message the most. Although we have our safety in mind, we also often remind ourselves of this when weighing out who to visit and who to avoid. The Walking America couple is here for everyone, but especially those who need help navigating their mind and finding contentment. Number 6. Matthew 6:22-23. The eye is the lamp of the body. So then, if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? One of the things we're raising awareness against is desire. The attainment of what you desire will not result in the cessation of that desire. Desire will continue to replace desire, and if you keep your attention, the light of your consciousness, on desire, it will consume you. Desire takes up your attentional space and grows to push everything else out, including love. Number 7. Matthew 13:3-8. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Very few people want to change their habits, and what we're preaching requires far greater work than diet and exercise alone. We're concerned with exercising our bodies, our minds, and regulating everything we consume, both physically and mentally. People like the feel-good stories we tell about the goodness out there, but we wouldn't be exposing ourselves to it, or even be able to find it, without the changes we've made within. You can't live like Jesus without making extreme changes within. But that's not the good news for bad habits that people want. It's good to remember this parable. There's a lot to prevent the seeds we plant from growing, but some of them will, and some of them are. Number 8. John 17:19. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world hates you. Matthew 10:14. And whoever does not receive you nor listen to your words, as you leave that house or city, shake the dust off your feet. We receive an incredible amount of support from people, but not all of our feedback is positive. Many people think what we're doing is ridiculous, that we're taking advantage of people, that we need a real job, though they are typically less than half the work of this job, or that we're entirely wrong about the nature of mind and the state of humanity. But really, most people are just coldly indifferent because we're not selling stimulation and entertainment, but education. What we're doing runs against the grain of the world's current form in almost every way. Jesus was ready to be hated for his beliefs, and he was ready to let go of those who remained closed off to important information. We're ready too. Number 9. Matthew 5:29 through 30. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. Jesus advised his disciples to go however far they had to keep themselves pure. We're far from achieving this ourselves, but we would advise the same. There are many things which prevent us from our optimal state, whether they are ideological attachments or hedonistic desires. We stay on the lookout for things which need to be cut off. For example, we rarely listen to lyrical music because of the impact it has on our inner monologue. We're not just left with earworms that keep us from being present, but nearly all music stimulates some sort of desire or dissatisfaction. We might empathize with it, but giving our attention to it means training those thought patterns. Similarly, we cut ourselves off from certain pleasures periodically, such as alcohol, or by going whole foods, so we don't become dependent or even accustomed. It's a far stretch from cutting our hand off, but cutting our hand off is exactly the kind of cognitive reframing we need to put it in perspective. Jesus' entire life is an example we're led by. Jesus traveled from place to place with very little, mostly faith amidst external uncertainty. He brought good news to everyone he could, and loved with little condemnation or judgment. But he took issue with the tradition and convention of the time, making him an adversary to many who had bought into the system they were conditioned by. He didn't let it get him down, though, and he kept his attention on his message regardless. And, by the end of his own travels, Jesus showed us the greatest act of selfless love. Number 10. John 15:2. This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, that a person will lay down his life for his friends. The walk can be scary. Traffic more than anything. We've had so many close calls we can't count them anymore. And that's excluding the wildlife, stranger danger, and storms we've been caught in. We often feel like we're just waiting for the journey to kill us. There's really no better way to set the example for what we hope to show the world. And very few ways as good at reaching so many people personally to talk to them about the things we've set out to. Overcoming the danger in good spirits showcases the power of the mind, and our interactions showcase the goodness and love that can be found if we free ourselves from judgment and form the proper perspective. Who else are we than someone who loves themselves more than anyone else, if we can't sacrifice our life to save our loved ones? If the soul of the entire world hangs in the balance, we can certainly walk to our own death.